50 years ago, when I was 5 years old, I came here to Stormont. I came to this Parliament building in the company of a bold and brilliant woman. That woman was my great aunt who I called Aunt Esther. We took a photograph that day, which I can show you by projecting on the big screen. That's me on the right. I was a very cute 5-year-old. In the middle are my mum and older siblings, and on the left is Aunt Esther. Underneath, the caption read, "On the steps of Stormont, September 1969. Now, some of you may be wondering what Aunt Esther and me from Cork were doing in Belfast in September 69. We were here on our holidays. The Troubles may have broken out, but Aunt Esther wasn't deterred. Every summer as a child, Aunt Esther would take me on holidays to her home. And her home was memorable or forgettable because it didn't have an indoor toilet. Instead, at the bottom of her orchard, it had a pit toilet. And I can recall Aunt Esther calling after me, "Don't forget to bring a newspaper." The newspaper wasn't for reading. The newspaper was for wiping. I couldn't read a newspaper. I read comics, and my favorite comic was called Victor. And Victor had stories of fighting action men. It didn't have any stories of women in action. Apparently, only men were involved in war. And I was none the wiser, as my Aunt Esther hadn't told me that she was involved in World War I. In 1972, Aunt Esther died, and she left her few personal possessions, like this satchel, to my mum. And my mum held on to it for the next 30 years, and in 2002, Mum died, and I inherited, and that's when I looked inside Aunt Esther's satchel. And the first thing I found inside was a photograph. This photograph, it's a photograph of 3 women. And the 3 women are wearing nurses' uniforms. And I'll project it onto the big screen. And there you see, that's Aunt Esther in the middle. This photograph was taken in Dublin about 1910. In August 1914, Britain and Ireland entered into war with Germany. And at the outbreak of war, there was a great shortage of professional trained nurses. And my Aunt Esther, she signed up for service. And she filled out this form which says Territorial Force Nursing Service. And she made the following declaration: "I hereby declare to serve the Territorial Force Nursing Service, and am willing to serve at home or abroad, wherever my services are required, in time of imminent national danger. Esther Walsh, October 1914. And inside the satchel, there's a small black notebook. This notebook, and on the front is written the word autographs. This is Aunt Esther's autograph book, and it was very common for nurses in World War I to have an autograph book. And on each page, a soldier has written a note to my Aunt Esther, and I'll read you this one. It's from George Rankin, dated the 30th of June, 1918. 56 Australians. He writes, "Sister Walsh is your name, and single is your station. Happy will be the lucky man that makes the alteration. The next one is even cheekier. It's from a recovering soldier called A.P. Kennedy. He writes, "When you were married and over the tub, think of me with every rub. Though the suds be ever so hot, lather away and forget me not." Aunt Esther worked in the neurological unit of Birmingham's military hospital, the first Southern General Hospital. And in the neurological unit, soldiers would have injuries like brain damage, which could be caused from explosion from a shell. And they'd present with seizures, palpitations, trembling, nightmares, calling out in the middle of the night. And it may have been one of these soldiers who wrote the following lines to Aunt Esther. "Recollections of a night instance while ill in bed, to thank you for all your kindness." Aunt Esther would have nursed soldiers from Britain and Ireland and France and Germany. But you may have a certain stereotype of what a nurse in the First World War would be like, which you'd have acquired from TV dramas. And often they present young, untrained, volunteer, aristocratic women of the upper class. Whereas Aunt Esther, she wasn't that young when she signed up. She was age 30, she was already a professionally trained nurse, and she wasn't from the upper class. Her father was a lighthouse keeper, and she was born on Rock Island, Crookhaven, in West Cork. As the song goes, "It's a long way to Tipperary," and it's an even longer way to West Cork, which both Aunt Esther and I discovered. In the full satchel, we find another object. It's a tin, and it's a cigarette tin. Now, I know Aunt Esther didn't smoke, so she may have been given this tin by a British or German soldier. And the brand name on the tin is Marathi cigarettes, and Marathi were smoked by both British and German soldiers. And inside this tin, there are dozens of tiny photographs, which are very faded, sepia-coloured, like this one, which is of a bombed building. It's actually a church, and on the back of it says, "Church of Oostkerke after the bombardment." Also inside her satchel, I found a letter. It's a letter from London, from the War Office, from the Matron-in-Chief, dated 19th July 1920. And it reads, "Dear Madam, I am directed to inform you that Her Majesty Queen Alexandra has graciously given her approval for the members of the Territorial Force Nursing Service to wear the TFNS ribbon in civil uniform. The ribbon should be worn on the right-hand side." There's also this little display case with a clasp, and when I open it, I see inside that it was produced by J.R. Gaunt and Son Limited, London. And J.R. Gaunt were jewellers who manufactured ribbons and medals for people in the uniformed services. And there's this ribbon, which is red in colour with a yellow stripe, which is Aunt Esther's service ribbon. And attached to it is a service medal with the Territorial Force Nursing Service inscribed on it. I don't know whether my Aunt Esther, after the war living in the south of Ireland, ever got to wear this medal. By 1929, at the age of 45. The prediction made by that Australian soldier in the autograph book turned out to be true. And I know this because I have found a card with a name card with Aunt Esther's name written in her handwriting on one side, and on the other side is typed Mrs. Tom McCullen. So Aunt Esther had got married and she became Mrs. Tom McCullen. And in getting married, she not only lost her name, but she also lost her job. So after 3 decades of a nursing career, her nursing career came to a sudden end. In her final years, Aunt Esther relied on an Irish state means-tested old age pension. And I'm not aware that she was able to access any additional financial support from the Irish state, being an Irish nurse who had fought in the First World War. By now, I no longer read war comics about men in action, and I realize that there are bold and brilliant women missing in action who have not been given the recognition that they deserve. And 50 years after I sat on the steps of this Parliament building with Aunt Esther, I realised that her story is my story. And it's also history, a history that is not widely known. And I'd like to take her service medal and pin it to my chest, remembering what the matron-in-chief said about wearing it on the right-hand side. And tonight, inside Parliament buildings, I'm happy to wear Aunt Esther's red ribbon.